Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Meg Heaton, and I've lived in the Hudson area for close to 30 years. I recently retired after being a reporter for the Hudson Star-Observer, and I've now become involved in an initiative to make our community dementia-friendly. Just like cancer, it's likely that every family in our circles will be touched by the disease of dementia. And like the early days in cancer treatment, there's often a lot of stigma associated with it. But that's changing, and in part because of people like my guest tonight. This program is one of several we're presenting to talk about what it's like living with dementia and what resources are available to help families and friends living with the disease. To my left is Darcy Strutt. Darcy describes herself as one half of a love story. She and Mike met at work, became good friends, and then married, combining their families. The couple became community volunteers. In 2006, Mike was the North Hudson Pepper Festival King, and in 2009, Darcy became the St. Paul Winter Carnival's Klondike Kate. And in 2015, they were named the Pepperfest Good Neighbors. Darcy's with us to describe what life is like for her and Mike these days and how her role as his primary caregiver has impacted their family. On my right is my good friend Nancy Abrahamson, the dementia care specialist with the Adult and Disability Resource Center of St. Croix County. Nancy's job includes many things: educating the public about dementia, conducting memory screenings, memory cafes, helping businesses and organizations become dementia friendly. But her primary function is helping people like Darcy and her family navigate their lives with dementia. So Darcy, let's start with you. Please tell us about Mike, who I know is also known as McHugh.
McHugh is what I call him.
And how your dementia journey began.
Well, I saw signs, looking back, actually as early as '09, when I was Klondike Kate. And one of the things that happened, which I just wrote off as nerves, is he would drop me off at an event because we would be running late and I'd have to go in. And when we got through with the event, he couldn't remember what lot the car was in. You know, so we would go through the process of hitting the emergency button on the car to try to find it. But it was 2010 that it was more obvious to me, and it was when our internet was cut off because bills weren't paid. And I think bills not being paid is kind of a signature of early dementia. And then just there was more odd things. He couldn't drive to places he hadn't been before. And I knew something was wrong at that point. But going to his family doctor, because at the time he was only 57, wow. The doctor, I mean, dementia wasn't even a thought. It was, he first said, well, maybe he just kind of partied too much when he was in his 20s. And
really?
Yeah. But it's difficult. I think that's kind of a hallmark, too, of early onset, is they don't want to diagnose it. So we went through actually 4 years of ruling out various things, which is an important thing, but it was so hard on me because
that's a long time.
Conversationally, he's excellent, and if he were here, he could still possibly convince you he was fine. So doctors would come to me and go, "Why are you here?" You know, until the testing was done, and then we started to we went through, like I said, everything that could be wrong that could be cured, which is a very important thing to do, because if you can do something, you want to do it. Bless you.
Excuse me.
But it was by 2014, when we had gone through everywhere else, a doctor finally recommended we go to the Mayo Clinic. And so we went to a neurologist specialist at the Mayo Clinic, and he basically said, I mostly am the one that diagnoses early onset, because doctors don't want to. And they can't really say you have it without very expensive testing, so it's known as a probable dementia caused by Alzheimer's. That's about all they can say. So it was a long journey to get the diagnosis to begin with.
Is that common, Nancy?
Yes, I want to add that typically doctors don't have a lot of information about dementia and diagnosing dementia, so they don't want to. And they're also operating on old information that you can't diagnose it. Any good and skilled, knowledgeable neurologist will say that's erroneous. You can diagnose within 97% accuracy. just like many other diseases that aren't totally 100%. So we're trying to get that information to caregivers so they can, as you tried to advocate and advocate and advocate, but it's not uncommon with young onset to take several years to get a diagnosis.
Yeah, and in an upcoming program, we're going to talk with Dr. Kristen Severson, who is a geriatric. And
yeah, she was our doc. She
Okay,
was who we
good.
finally got to, and she was our best advocate.
Yes.
To lead us down this path.
So we'll be talking with her about
Wonderful.
how people can talk to their primary physicians or what questions to ask. When you had it was 4 years until this actually came across. Where was the rest of the family? You have a lot of kids together.
Right. I mean, they could tell things were happening. Simple things like playing dominoes became beyond him within the first couple years after I noticed things wrong. And my family would come to me and say, you know, often the wife doesn't know, you know, are you aware that he's having problems? I'm going, yes, I'm very aware he's having problems. Yeah. You know, the grandkids have been amazing because they don't know what's wrong, but they know Grandpa needs a partner at games.
Ah.
So
And they're open to that.
Even at 10 and 8 years old now, and even before then, you know, if we were going to do anything, they would say, I'll be Grandpa's partner, you know, and still have him included. But they were very aware, not why, but that something was different with Grandpa.
How has this changed his personality? First describe what he's like, and then.
Oh, he's still wonderful, and I think when we went first to the doctor to do mental testing, the doctor looked at me after talking for a while and really did say, "Why are you here?" You know, because McHugh is he's so wonderfully social. I mean, that's what made him an excellent Pepper King. That's what made him an excellent Mr. Kate. I say I learned most of my social cueing from him because he is so superior to me socially. But then the doctor did the testing and went, first, I want to apologize to your wife. And second, you're lucky to have her. Because the testing showed he was very much, you know, declining. But he is still to this day just loving, sweet, cares much more about you than talking about himself, which is how he can hide it as well. Sure. He will focus on you and your life, and everyone wants to be seen. And he is someone who sees people, who sees what they're doing, who remembers. He still remembers, you know, Nancy by name and, you know, some of the last conversations, even though, you know, he might not remember how to make coffee with the Keurig. But the social aspect, he's wonderful, kind, you know, has always been very considerate. But
and is he aware pretty much of what's going on?
He is some days. You know, some days he will deny it. You know, some days he'll say...
Days he can't remember.
Right. There are some days that he'll say, you know, eventually you'll realize that I'm fine and you'll apologize, is one of the things he has said to me. But when we were first dating at 3M, or after 3M, he would do sweet things like, you know, buy me gifts and things like that. Well, in 2010, that's when I turned 50, and we had our 10th wedding anniversary, and he forgot both. And that's so not him. And he didn't know what to do, and it was just, and everyone said, well, he must have done something wonderful, because he's always doing something wonderful. But it was, by then, he still loves completely, but it just becomes harder. Yeah.
How did you and Darcy hook up?
I believe she emailed me initially, and I don't recall how you heard about me.
Dr. Severson.
Okay.
Dr. Severson, yeah.
Yeah, she's a wonderful advocate. So she emailed me, and so we had initially quite an email conversation back and forth about resources and things. And then I eventually met with her and McHugh. We had a visit, consult.
How did that go?
That was wonderful. I had used a different resource that was also recommended, but she was for the caregiver only. And it felt like I was hiding behind McHugh's back, you know? Sure. And I wanted, because like I said, I'm a half of a love story. It's a partnership. I mean, this disease is our disease. I mean, I can't, it just is. So when Nancy said, no, let's meet together and talk through it, it was so wonderful because it helped him feel he wasn't going to be ostracized, he wasn't going to be judged. She really brought out the fact that people knowing is only going to help you and support you. It's nothing you did wrong to get this disease. And it's not that you failed in any way, you know. So I think that first meeting with the three of us was a wonderful way to start understanding how us as a couple were going to deal with this together.
And I think it's important for any members of the family, and particularly a couple, to realize or to be affirmed that this disease doesn't take everything at once. It's very incremental. So as you described earlier today, he has many skills left.
Yeah.
And this disease doesn't take away everything, even till the end. There are still some retained skills. That's an important message for us to get across.
Yeah, that is important. How have his friends and extended family reacted?
You know, they're always very supportive. I think often they're not sure what to do or how to act, or, you know, so there's a piece that they want to make sure that he always feels like he always has. I mean, he's a member of the Pepperfest Kings group. And so for many years they've been doing fundraisers and things, and so he would take part in that. They would know not to give him difficult things. Now he's to the point where he really can't. Sometimes I'll go just socially to meetings with him, but there's no more volunteering, but they understand that, you know. So I think the expectations have been really good from friends and family. Family, it's somewhat difficult because not all family is close. I mean, he has a son in the military that hasn't been home for a couple years. Oh, yeah. And that's tough. And sometimes he forgets that he's so far away, you know, so he'll want to go see Adam. But other times I wish he could come home just to be with his dad while his dad is still more present. Like you said, it's very incremental. I don't know how he's going to be next year. But on the negative side, it is more isolating. I mean, there are friends that have stopped inviting us to places. And certainly I don't feel comfortable going to very crowded venues. I mean, a lot of the Winter Carnival events they're mayhem. It's a madhouse. And when you're concerned about losing sight of him, because I don't think he could find me. If I lose sight of him, we're separated. And it would be more because he just stops to have a conversation. You know, it's not that he's wandering away, it's he's conversing. And then I don't know where he is, and he doesn't know where I am. So it's, if there's small events, that's what I prefer. Sure. And if people want to go out for supper, I'd love them to come to our house, so we don't have decisions about what to eat. We don't have the risk of him reaching for somebody else's glass or eating from somebody else's plate if he forgets which one is his.
And he'll do better in the environment he knows well.
Yeah. Yeah. So supportive. Our neighborhood, we live on Sherry Circle, and that is a wonderful neighborhood. Most of my closer friends around the circle know. So they're there to help out. He has a very close friend from 3M that also retired, that's the other hard thing about early onset, is most of our friends are working. Sure. So it's, you know, even on Thursdays when I'm a day away, I need to schedule lunches with people, but most of my friends are still working. Sure. So we have.
And you aren't working anymore.
I am not working. I retired. Well, I left the workforce this year.
Because of because this is a full-time.
This is it's more. They call it the 36-hour day. Sure. And my career was a 50-hour week. You know, so it just
not compatible.
It's not compatible. It's not compatible.
Can you talk a little bit about what your days are like as a caregiver, and how you take care of yourself? Because that's one of the important things, right, Nancy?
Yeah,
very much.
And that's still an effort. Taking care of myself is still difficult. And the days, I look at it as between the two of us, we fill in the gaps of each other. And so some days are really good days, and you know, and he can get up and get dressed and make coffee, and we converse. Any projects we do together, you know, because there's just some things that he thinks he knows how to do that he doesn't. And one of the most bizarre things to me is that he could fully describe how to do something but not do it. Which is interesting because it's a different part of the brain. I mean, when we had to stack wood, he could tell me exactly how to stack wood, you know, to crisscross it and all of that. But when he went to do it, it just was in a mess pile. And he'd look at it and know it wasn't right.
Wow.
But then I'd make it right. And on bad days, he might come down and not know how to get downstairs, you know, or not know where the bathroom is, or, you know, or stare at the Keurig and not know how to make a cup of coffee, or start it and not have the cup under it.
Sure.
You know, just
Missing a step or two.
missing a step. And when you think about it, it makes me laugh. They say it takes, you know, 7 steps to brush your teeth, or 11 steps, something.
20-some.
20-some.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, so I do wet the toothbrush, put the paste on the toothbrush and hand it to him. I mean, and on those days that are bad days, I dress him. You know, it's just.
So what you're doing, Darcy, and this is so, because it's different every day, is you're figuring out which steps to assist with so he doesn't have to work so hard to problem solve, and he can be more successful.
Right.
Without taking over. And that's a difficult balance for caregivers and for families to understand that there are many steps to things we do, but we don't think about it because we've been rehearsing it for years.
Yeah, really. How do you take care of yourself? These are stressful days.
It is stressful days. I think it took me a while to start using some of the resources. We went to Memory Cafe a few times, and that was in the beginning. And then when I was getting closer to needing to leave work, that's when Nancy really encouraged me to use the day away that they have. So every Thursday, McHugh goes to day away, which is from 9 o'clock until 3. And that allows me to go grocery shopping. It allows me to get my hair cut. It just allows me to even mow the lawn where I know that he's fine. And actually, he enjoys that because he's not judged. He laughs. They have activities where it's hard for me to keep him engaged all day long and still run a household.
And where he's social too, I would imagine.
Oh,
that
he's
appeals
very
to him as
social.
well.
Yeah. But even today on the way there, he said, "Okay, so what have we done since last week? What can I tell them?" Because they always ask, you know. So what can I tell them that we've done? But I have tried to keep up some of my loves. I mean, I love to work on scripture and preach at CCH. I do that once a month as a volunteer, and for a while he would come with me, but now it's just too stressful for him. So I have a friend at church. I drop him off at the Methodist Church, and then I go down to CCH for my little half hour. And that's something that I do for me, that I want to keep on doing for me.
Methodist Church is dementia friendly too, isn't it?
Yes, it is a dementia-friendly church.
Which is wonderful. So the minister is very aware. Her husband is one that will sit with him, just hang with him and sing the hymns and make sure all is well until I get back. His really good friend Paul Anderson and her wife Kathy was another one who really encouraged me to reach out to Nancy. But Paul actually took him to the YMCA and took him shopping for my birthday this week. So he had a birthday present for me. And that was due to Paul understanding that that was a need, you know.
And it was something that McHugh would have done
Right.
the rest of his life. So he's a very insightful friend.
Yeah. I need to work on getting with other people. I think that's, I isolate because I have so much to do when he's a day away. And it's difficult for me to even call a girlfriend because he gets upset when I'm on the phone.
Oh, okay.
And he certainly doesn't want me talking about him. So I haven't mentioned this interview either. But I want to make sure that he's always as joyful as he can be, as happy as he can be. And so my dilemma is, how do I break down with a girlfriend You know, it has to be on Thursdays between 9 and 3 if I can find one available. So I still have work to do there. But the other thing that Nancy encouraged me to do was to make a list of, if somebody says, what can I do? Have a list written down. And I've done that. You know, and so when somebody says, well, you know, do you need a hand to do something? Yes, I can. Help me do X, Y, Z. You know, whether it's replace the lights on the garage because they're bad, or replace the doorbell, or, you know, help move heavy things. I'm getting much better at asking for help, which is also supportive to me.
Sure.
To help
It's an
me kind of
important
maintain.
strategy of self-care.
Yeah. Because otherwise you feel pretty helpless. Those are things that McHugh would have done.
Sure.
You know, and now I don't have him there to do that. So
The other thing I want to emphasize about that is that when people offer to help, they really want to, and when we don't allow them, they don't get to have that that charitable act, and and this helps them get to know situations too.
Oh, sure.
So I think, you know, the more that we can engage friends, associates, whatever, it's quite good for everyone.
You mentioned the word strategies. What other kind of strategies in terms of taking care of yourself as a caregiver do you think about?
You know, we can't emphasize enough to get help, and get help sooner than later. Most people wait. It's kind of like savings. You know, you save your money until you really need it, but the fact is we need it sooner than later. So so don't wait too long. Help the individual get used to other people interacting or other activities, because that works really, really well. The other thing that I hope Darcy gets to, and other caregivers, is to use that day away day, not just for tasks. That would be great if you could have lunch with a friend, or maybe just lay on your couch and read all day long. But I know, you know, there's much to do with a 36-hour day. So, you know, adding another day, getting someone into the home a couple of hours of the week. And we have other programs. We have a LEAPS volunteer program. We have, we contract, we have funding for people to get help in the home if they meet certain eligibility criteria, which are relatively liberal. So that's what I encourage people to do.
That's good. Yeah. Again, another reason to contact you to find out what resources are available.
Exactly.
Looking down the road, do you do that? Do you look forward or backward, or where does that fit
you know,
in?
I always say one of the other gifts that McHugh's giving me is trying to keep me in the present. But I time travel all the time. And it's scary because with early onset, we were both working, you know, and at 57, obviously I hadn't intended to retire. And, you know, you look at, I have another 8 years before Medicare can kick in. So right now I'm on COBRA, but eventually I'm going to be buying my insurance through the common market, which is very high.
Yeah.
Looking at expenses, you know, even silly things like I'm thinking Social Security goes by your highest salary for X number of years. And when I look back, I have some years that I wasn't working yet, you know, that have to go into that.
They take the last date.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that we'll be okay, but you look at if we need, if for some reason I can't keep him at home, I mean, the average is about $8,000 a month for a care. I mean, a full in-house care, right?
Yeah.
And that's scary. I mean, to the point where if we do spend all of our savings for retirement, that's just kind of a scary future. We're blessed in that we both have pensions. You know, I have not pulled mine because it would be very small right now, so I'm hoping to hang on until 65. But there's financial worries.
Sure.
There's also worries about how I will be able to cope when he gets farther down the journey. I mean, right now, he's still very loving and tender, but Alzheimer's often will become angry and hallucinate, and we do have some tough conversations already, just that are unlike him. But my fears, I have to come back from them often. I mean, I'm reading, and a lot of the books are towards the end of the journey. And that causes me to just kind of panic. Am I going to be able to be strong enough to do all of the things that I need to do? So yeah, I do. I time travel. I go there and then I pull myself back and realize right now we're good. Right now we're still caring for parents, caring for grandkids.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, the other thing with early onset is your parents are still alive, most likely, but getting towards the end of their life. So he has his father alive. My parents are alive. All of them are 86, 87. Want visits, want, you know, our time, but it's harder and harder to travel with McHugh.
Sure.
So it's, you've got young grandkids, you've got elderly parents, and then kind of mixing in the caregiving at the same time.
You fit the caregiver cohort of 45 to 65. Most caregivers are that age group, and many of them are either still working or they have children and grandchildren that they're caring for. So it's a very challenging period in their lives.
Gosh, yes. As we kind of draw to a close here, for both of you, advice for people, lessons learned, Darcy?
I think just be an advocate. Keep pushing to find that diagnosis. I think that was really important. The thing that I may regret is before we got the diagnosis, I really didn't look into long-term care insurance. That probably was a misstep on my part. I don't know, but I mean, I can't go back and undo that. Once he had a diagnosis, then long-term care would have been exorbitant.
Very prohibitive.
But I think to be really forgiving of yourself, and one of the funny things the book said is you have every day to do better because they forgot you did wrong yesterday.
I like that.
You know, and that is, I mean, just to be gentle with him, be gentle with me, and know that we're both doing the best we can.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing the best he can, I'm doing the best we can. I try to focus on all the love we still share. And for him, it's difficult because he wants to contribute. He wants to be a helper. He wants to do so much for people, and I keep reminding him his love of his grandkids, his friendship of friends. Those are things that he still has. And I think to try to not take away things while he can still do them, like you were saying, without him getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But that's just to really find that balance of making him feel the world still needs him.
It's very important. People with dementia want to have sense of purpose. Again, as impaired as their brain might make them, they still want to have purpose. So recognizing that as a strength, and the more, it's part of our initiative is to help the world understand that, because there are many things they can still do. So I think that's good. The other asset that Darcy used was her curiosity, really becoming educated about what's going to happen. It isn't always pretty, but you can prepare then. And advocacy works beyond the medical field. It works with friends and neighbors. It's just a strength that caregivers, when they develop that, really find it's helpful right through the entire disease process.
Well, he's a lucky man, I think.
Yeah.
And a lucky that you found each other.
Yeah,
You know?
it is. It is a love story.
It
and
is.
we have, he's continuing to teach me so much. Like I said, his social skills, I learn from him still daily. And, you know, and if you think about staying present is a spiritual, you know, kind of way to be. And I think any person with dementia, but especially someone who's as loving and tender as McHugh is staying together and remembering we love each other and remembering what's important. You know, it's not important that he said something wrong, because it doesn't matter. I mean, way back in the day, I'd want to correct him. You know, no, we didn't install granite, dear. We installed quartz on the countertop. Well, what does it matter if you think I installed granite or quartz? You know, what matters is I corrected him and he felt bad.
I think the blessing of dementia, when you understand it, is there's a lot you let go that's just not important.
Yes.
And you focus on being present and being with one another.
Yeah, and the love you share.
Yes.
And we definitely are very much in love. So, still, through it all.
Well, I thank you both for being present here today. We want to mention that there are resources across St. Croix County for families and individuals who are living with dementia. We've provided information about those resources as part of this program. The Dementia Friendly Coalition is sponsored by the St. Croix Valley Foundation, and they are at work in efforts to make communities across the county dementia friendly. Information about the coalition is provided here as well. And as I mentioned before, upcoming programs will include interviews with more caregivers, as well as with elder law specialist Jennifer O'Neill and Dr. Severson, who specializes, like I said, in geriatric medicine and who obviously is a great resource for people. I want to thank you both again for being with us and for sharing your experiences and their willingness to help us all understand what it's like to live with dementia. Thank you very much for watching.